I grew up in Hickman, Kentucky, on the Mississippi River. It's a little Huckleberry Finn town. It was established in the mid-1800s, about the same time the University of Kentucky was established. My parents' home is an old Victorian house on the bluff overlooking the river. Down the street is a wonderful old antebellum courthouse where my father was a judge. He'd been a University of Kentucky arts and science student, graduate, and a law school graduate, so he was mayor of that little town. So my growing up years were very idyllic with my two sisters. We went out on our farm and we rode horses and played in the barn and played hide and seek in the hay loft in the barn. It was a childhood full of independence and freedom, I think because there was no fear that we would be harmed. Deciding to come to the University of Kentucky was a very easy decision for me. My father had graduated from there. My sister later attended University of Kentucky after me. It was really, it was a major land-grant university in Kentucky, and it had wonderful professors, a great reputation. I thought a little bit about going to Vanderbilt, but I was a Kentucky girl. I was born a Kentucky girl and I'll die a Kentucky girl. I was very interested in English and history and photography, and all of those things were in the College of Arts and Science. And I thought that I wanted to go to law school and follow in my father's footsteps, but it seemed like any of the subjects that I could pursue in arts and sciences would be a very good base for going to law school. I started law school at the University of Kentucky, and then I was offered a job by Senator Ford to come as an intern to Washington. He was our Kentucky senator. And I did that for the summer, and then he asked me to stay and become a legislative aide. So I did that, and I remember calling my father and saying, "Oh, Senator Ford has offered me this job, but I'm in law school. What should I do?" And he said, "Well, of course, do both." So I went to law school at night at Washington College of the Law, American University, and to finish my law career, and worked as a legislative aide during the day. I would go on the Senate floor, and I would be the only woman there. And that was the situation for maybe 2 or 3 years. And then after that, all of a sudden, half of the staff on the Senate floor would be women. So that changed very dramatically. So I worked in the Senate. I went to law school at night. When I finished, I became the counsel, then the senior counsel of the Senate Commerce Committee Consumer Subcommittee, and where I worked with Senator Ford, who was chairman of that committee, and then of that subcommittee, and then Senator Al Gore, who was chairman of that subcommittee, and Senator Ernest Hollings from South Carolina, who was the chair of the full Commerce Committee. And that was fascinating. And I certainly fell back on my arts and science study of history, study of political science, study of English in order to be able to write well in those early days. And in order to write legislation, one needed a grounding in history. One needed to know what had happened before. One needed to understand the ramifications that political science taught you. So I was very glad to have that arts and science background early on in my career. Then I went to a law firm. After 12 years on Capitol Hill, I went to a law firm where I worked as a senior attorney and the equivalent of a partner in the law firm. We were shareholders. And I was the first woman on the board of directors of that law firm, and the first woman on the executive committee of that law firm. I was President Clinton and Vice President Gore's representative and ambassador to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. There again, I was the first female U.S. ambassador to the OECD, and the second woman ambassador to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. I was the first woman on the board of Rolls-Royce in London, the aviation engine manufacturer, and I served on small company boards and nonprofit boards. I currently serve on the board of the American Hospital of Paris. I am on the legal board of the American Cathedral of Paris. I serve on the board in Washington, D.C. of the Hillwood Museum. My son is 20 years old, goes to the College of Charleston, My husband practices law and is an international lawyer. The early days of our marriage, we would come home and talk about the issues we were facing. And it was very helpful to do that, to have advice at home. But later it became too boring to come home and talk about all the problems we had to deal with during the day. And so after a few years, we didn't really do that anymore, unless we really had a hard problem and needed the other's advice. And even today, we still help each other from time to time.
Of the many things I find most attractive about my dear wife, beyond the personal attributes, professionally, she seemed to have been born with the genetic code of a judge and a diplomat combined in one. She has this great ability to see issues, despite the cacophony of emotion or politics or statecraft surrounding them, to see issues very clearly, to find where the common ground should be, and to help people gently, diplomatically, find their way to that common ground. And that's a great gift. And her career was perfectly matched to that set of skills.
One of the most important things for any student is to have curiosity and to take courses that are very interesting to the student and to follow the student's passion. If you follow your passion, you're never going to feel like you're working. It's always going to be fun, and you're going to be driven to do what you do. And I feel like I did in my career, follow my passion. I'm happy that I did. And I worked very hard, but it never really seemed like I was working because I was following my passion.